Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, here to do a Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. Where is Barnabas Collins? So, by the end of Dark Shadows, and I do mean the regular timeline, by the end of episode 1198, we see that Barnabas, Professor Stokes, Dr. Hoffman have made it back to their timeline, have made it back to regular time, I should say. They're not in the past anymore. They're not in 1840 or 1841, if you will. You literally have them in them in the drawing room. Professor Stokes makes a comment about food being in a refrigerator, which I love. I think that's a funny line. And Elizabeth walks in, so everything is now normal. There's a lot I could get into with just this scene, but I'll forgo that for now. Um, because that's not my main focus. My main focus is Barnabas himself. Where is he? So let's tackle the first thing. Did Barnabas go to the Collinsport Historical Center or the Collinsport Historical Society, whatever you want to call it? Um, the the place that got built for, and Roger got to give a speech at. That's where Roger is, by the way. That's where most of the family is. Roger, Clanton, Carolyn, David, they're all there. And Roger's going to give this big speech. Again, I won't get into the specifics of how I feel about this episode. It's because there's a lot to cover there. In my opinion, there's more there than meets the eye. Um, because it's again, I'll probably cover this episode individually because I do want to talk about it, and it's killing me not to talk about it right now. But I more want to again. I want to focus on Barnabas. So does Barnabas go there with Professor Stokes, with Dr. Hoffman, with Elizabeth, uh, Colin Stoddard? Yeah, I think he does. I mean, why wouldn't he? Because if he doesn't go, if he tries to go to the old house, I think Julie's spidey sense would go off in a heartbeat. Um, Now, what happens after that? And let's specifically focus on Barnabas and Dr. Julia Hoffman. Does Dr. Julia Hoffman return to Wincliffe? Well, let's be honest. Dr. Julia Hoffman hasn't really been to Wincliffe in a long time. The last time we saw her at Wincliffe was when they were letting Willie out, and that was it. Yeah, she still has connections there. She still makes calls there, but she hasn't been there. And this leads me to believe two things. Either one, Julia's A, going to go back to her normal job, or B, Julia just isn't going to go back to her normal job and she's going to stick with Barnabas because she wants to see what he's going to do. And as much as, the first one makes sense to everybody and to myself included, you got to consider the fact that this woman has really made no real effort to return to work at all. Um, I really think Julie at this point is, you know what, I'd rather just continue to be on the sabbatical because I've gone on one hell of a journey, and she has. I mean, this woman has gone back in time. This woman has gone back in time twice now. Um, she's killed her own doppelganger. Who gets to kill their own doppelganger? Only Dr. Julia Hoffman, gets to kill their own doppelganger. And she herself, we know that Julia is in love with Barnabas. So I can't see her just leaving him. I can see them going on an adventure together. Now, we know what Sam Hall wrote, that he finally accepted Julia and loved her back. I love me some Sam Hall. I think he's a genius. The writers of Dark Shadows were very, very smart people. I'm gonna tell you this: I can't see it. Now, it's nothing against Dr. Hoffman. I think once he lost Angelique, that was it. That was it for him. Um, you got to understand. Here's a guy who tried to get married. That didn't work. From with Josette, he ends up marrying Angelique. The marriage didn't work well. Um, he loses Josette. He loses Roxanne. He loses any woman he touches. And including Angelique. She ends up dying. And I think once she died, once because keep in mind the curse is lifted and Angelique dies. I really think that again that was it. It's like nah, I'm tapping out. I give. Um, and I don't mean tapping out in life. I just mean like he's checked out at this point in the love department. It's like if literally I can't literally have the woman I want ever. Why should I even try? And I do think there's that sort of Barnabas moment. You've got to sort of decide for yourself where the character is going in a sense that okay, is he honestly going to fall in love with Grayson Hall's Dr. Julie Hoffman? Because up until this point, there's a difference between admiring somebody and falling in love with them. And I do think he admires her. I think he admires her courage, her honesty, her integrity. And I don't think that's something that's never going to change now for Barnabas. Barnabas has seen what lengths she'll go to help him. And he appreciates that very much. This is forever friendship, a bonded friendship that'll never now be broken. And that's something you can appreciate between those two characters. I mean, they've been through a lot together. And it's the same thing with Barnabas and Willie. They're a friendship now that'll never be broken. They have a friendship now that'll never be broken. I mean, Willie Loomis himself is probably the character who grew the most, who changed the most, um, in my opinion. Now with Barnabas, does he leave with Dr. Julie Hoffman? Meaning, does he leave Collinsport with her? Again, we've seen them go back in time together. We've seen them go on adventures together. I could see them going around the world and going on adventures together. That I could see. Um, because it would make sense. I mean, Barnabas, maybe he lives a life of excitement now. And instead of just living a life at the old house where all these memories are, and the memories would just forever haunt him. He would just, I mean, what's he going to do? Sit at the old house and ponder? I don't think he would, no. Um, I think whatever's going to happen is going to be is going to be because of Barnabas. And what I mean by that is whether he leaves or he doesn't. If he leaves, it's going to be under his terms. Okay, we're leaving. Let's go here. Um, where would they have gone? I think they would have went to Europe. They could have went to England. They could have went to France. They could have went a ton of places. Maybe they went to Egypt. Maybe Barnabas wanted to look into the whole Phoenix thing a little more. Again, we don't know. And again, I'm not going to preference here and saying that I do know. No, I don't. This is just me giving my opinion. If Barnabas left, okay, if Barnabas leaves Collinsport, I'd rather think he'd go to England because he always talked about England. I mean, he said he was from there. Maybe Barnabas decides to go there and actually explore London. Why not, right? Maybe he not just London, but the entire Europe, all of Europe. Maybe him and Dr. Hoffman do that. Maybe they find some trouble along the way. We don't know. So let's say that decision gets made and they go on this fantastic adventure. Great, right? Where does it stop? I think there has to be a realization point by either Barnabas or Julia where there's this conversation. No, again, no matter whether Barnabas leaves or not, That's my stress point. That it's not just about where Barnabas is, it's about the conversation he has with the conversation he needs to have with Dr. Hoffman. Because you got to understand what both these characters have been through. If you've never watched Dark Shadows, they've been through time travel. They've again, Julia killed her own doppelganger for God's sakes in parallel time. Um, Barnabas knew about the other parallel time room too, the 1841 one. Keep in mind that they've seen all this stuff. They've seen the Count Patofes, the Judah Zacharies, the Leviathans. They've seen it all seemingly. One of them, either Barnabas or Julie, had to have this conversation. Like, is this really all over? Like, is everything we went through, is it really over? Like, or is this just the calm before the storm? And I think again, you got to realize, okay, it may not happen tomorrow. It may not happen the next day. It could happen years from now. Who's to say this won't happen again? And there had to be a conversation between Julie and Barnabas where I do believe Dr. Hoffman has some blood, has blood samples of Barnabas's vampire DNA. And I do believe she kept them. I also believe that she told Barnabas she kept them. And he might say, well, why? What if this all starts again? Do you really believe, after everything we went through, that this is all over? All of it? That none of this is going to come back to haunt us or come back at all? Keep in mind, entities just seem to be showing up at Collinsport at one point in time and another. And then there's still entities lying around. There's still widows. There's still these ghosts, right? So is it really over? And I think that's a conversation Barnabas and Julia definitely had, no matter where they were, whether they were in England, whether they were in France, whether they stayed in Collinsport and were talking about stuff at the old house. By the way, the old house is the original Collinwood. Um, also, keep in mind that let's say they stayed. So, does Barnabas go back to 1796? My buddy Patrick McRae had a hell of a theory that maybe Barnabas goes back to 1796 and he tells Angelique everything and says, let's get the hell out of here. The hell with everything else. It's a possibility. It's also a possibility, too, that, again, keep in mind, Barnabas has time traveled before. I honestly think by this point in time, if he does do this, Barnabas has opened up so many timelines of himself that it's not even funny. That, and I'm not meaning this in a negative way, I'm meaning this in a, time travel could have disastrous consequences, and the consequences it could be you've now you now have other doppelgangers of yourself, and there are even more evil versions of yourself, the vampire. And I do think there is that possibility of Barnabas there being a very, very evil Barnabas Collins, um, that we just have not seen yet, and it's out there. I'm talking way worse than the vampire we got in House of Dark Shadows. So if you've seen House of Dark Shadows, picture a worse vampire than that, um, and a lot more maniacal than that. So I also think that if he goes back in time and him and Angelique ride off into the sunset together, it isn't over. I mean, they're not going to be as free as I think Barnabas thinks they are, and maybe even Angelique knows that. Again, it, does Barnabas really care about the whole Judah Zachary thing? Again, you're traveling back in time. Does he now bring her to the present day? Does he bring Angelique of 1796 to the present day, her physical body with her somehow, in some way, shape, or form? No, I don't think they do that. I think they stay in the past. and I think they just live their life, whatever that's meant to be. And no, I'm not punning what Barnabas said to Josette's portrait. I do think the words of at Josette's portrait, if Barnabas goes back in time to be with Angelique, become the words he spoke at Angelique's portrait become his fate with whatever happens with Angelique. Um, which is a scary thing. Did they have a kid? I mean, I'm sure they did. They Barnabas and Angelique have had a very interesting relationship. Um, I'll just say that. I'll keep it PG for today. You know exactly where I'm going. Let's see what else. If Barnabas goes back in time, who knows about it? I don't know. That's I'm not so certain he would tell anybody because you got to understand Barnabas himself has done everything for the family. He literally has risked it all. So maybe he feels that going back in time and you know being with Angelique should be his reward. Again, I sort of wonder if he goes back in time, is he going to run into a doppelganger of himself? Is he, what's he really going to run into once he goes back there? Because we've seen things go bad back there before with the Leviathans. So who's to say it wouldn't go bad again? We don't know. But I don't think he necessarily would tell anybody. He might, would he leave a note? I don't know. Are you really going to leave a note at this point after everything that you've been through and you really want to go be with the woman you want to be with? Like, even if he leaves a note, it's just like, so what? It's like you're just telling people that you went back in time. I mean, I don't think Barnabas would do that at this point because in my mind, Barnabas doesn't owe anybody anything at this point. He's done everything to save the family, to save the people of Collinsport. He's risked it all, and I mean he's lost it all too, literally. I mean, so going back in time, maybe okay, I want to go be with Angelique, boom. So let's say he doesn't and just stays in Collinsport. What becomes of our buddy Barnabas? Again, I've said this with if he leaves, it's going to be the same thing if he stays in Collinsport. There's going to be a conversation with him and Julia. Is this really all over? I'm not meaning just the Judah Zachary stuff. I mean in the other stuff. Hey, how about Count Patofe? Where's he at? Hey, how about this whole werewolf curse thing that's still haunting Christianities out there somewhere? We know that's not over. How about are the Leviathan really just gone? I mean, can we really trust that? No, we can't. I do think there's some hefty conversations between him and Dr. Julie Hoffman about can we really just relax or do we really need to have a contingency plan in case shit goes bad again? And I do think there's that conversation between him and her no matter what. No matter whether Barnabas and her leave Collinsport or whether they stay. So again, I've said where they would end up. They would end up in England, in my opinion. They could end up in Egypt too. Who knows? Barnabas and Julia go to Tokyo. Oh no, oh no! It's a fictional show, for God's sake. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts. Where do you think Barnabas and Julia went to, or did Barnabas stay in Collinsport? Did he go back in time? Where is Barnabas Collins? Hope you guys have a great day.